So we are going to start our first session for today. We'll be talking about climate change and the just energy transition. The reason why we need to know about this background, because it's important for us to know why we are doing renewable energy. So the main reason why we are having crisis today because of climate change and so on, we have to understand before we know further about the technologies that is going to be one of the solutions for climate change and the reason why energy transition is important. First of all, let's explain about climate change. Currently, we are facing what they call climate crisis because we are facing global warming. So the global warming is actually due to human factor and the release of greenhouse gases over the years during our industrial revolution. And until today, humans have been doing a lot of interference towards the environment. And a lot of these activities have released significant amount of greenhouse gases. Naturally, there is actually what we call greenhouse effect. When the sun radiates the heat, goes to the earth, and normally it will radiate back to the environment, to the outer space. But because there's accumulation of greenhouse gases, it creates this so-called greenhouse effect that traps the heat under the earth and it creates a global warming. So due to global warming, we are facing climate change. So one of the reasons why we need to do renewable energy is because, first of all, we need to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. So that is one of the major steps that is needed to do for the whole planet. The other thing is we need to transition from fossil fuel-based fuel into renewable energy. Because one of the major contribution for global warming is carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that have been released to the environment. So we need to do that. If you look at the natural cycle of carbon, our Earth has its own natural ability to recycle carbon. So over the years, we have all these different processes that happens. So for example, when any organic matter dies, it goes to the bottom of the ocean and it got deposited and it's been covered with layers of silt and it becomes oil and gas over millions of years of process. But through genius of human ingenuity, we start taking out a lot of this carbon that was trapped in our environment for millions, even billions of years, and now using it for fuel. And when we do this, all of this carbon that used to be underground is being exposed back to the environment. Yeah. So as more and more fossil fuel is being used for generating energy, for transport or any other industry needs, more and more carbon is being released to the environment. And this have actually put a lot of pressure to the natural processes to bring down this carbon dioxide from environment. So, for example, our forests. And the more forest is being cut down, the less ability for Mother Earth to actually bring back and pull down this carbon dioxide into the soil. So these are some of the reasons why we have a climate crisis. So it's important to see that we have to stop the whole greenhouse effect. We have to stop first releasing of more and more carbon dioxide to the environment. Secondly, we have to pull that greenhouse gases back to the earth, to the natural processes, so that earth can do its natural process. But we have to help the environment. We have to help Mother Earth so that it can use its natural processes to pull down the carbon dioxide and other gases back to the environment through photosynthesis and so on. So why do we need to from fossil fuel to renewable energy? So as you look at this graph, there's a very clear sign that over the past decades, the mean temperature have gone up, and also due to reason of the amount of atmospheric carbon dioxide contained in the atmosphere. So it has correlation that every time the amount of carbon dioxide goes up in the environment, the global mean temperature also goes up. Yeah. So this shows that we have to reduce this amount of carbon dioxide in our environment to reduce the temperature. So this have been shown by many studies through looking at how the different ice core, and the content of the gases in that ice over the years. Yeah. So this means that every time the temperature goes up, so the mean level also goes up. We can see that there's a lot of threat, especially for small islands, and also seaside communities, is going to be threatened because of this increased temperature and the increase of sea level. So a lot of this Arctic ice, or a lot of this is due to the melting of the Arctic ice, and if we do not do anything, so the trend will continue. A global crisis of this needs global action. So we have seen that there's a lot, we talk about carbon dioxide, but greenhouse gases is not just carbon dioxide. There are many other greenhouse gases there. Yeah. And most importantly, gases like methane and also nitrous oxide is also very potent. Yeah, it's highly potent. But the sheer amount of carbon dioxide, which is 76% of the total emission, means that the carbon dioxide is should be targeted, because carbon dioxide mostly comes from our vehicle and also energy production. So that's why renewable energy plays a very, very important role in this action. I just want to share a little bit of what is happening in the global level. So maybe some of you have heard about the United Nations Framework on the Climate Change Convention, UNFCCC, which meets every year to come up with the global solution. It's actually meeting of different parties of the convention. Parties means countries, and also civil society, academic, and all other people who have interest on climate change. So the COP, actually the Conference of Parties, is actually a very important meeting to make decision about what the action that needs to be done by different countries, different actors, different players, and to ensure that we have common target. So currently there are many parts of the convention is still under negotiation, but one thing that very important in the convention is they have agreed that the amount of renewable energy needs to be tripled in the next coming years. So consideration to look at the different approaches and the different program needs to increase, including indigenous peoples, communities. We also play an important role in achievement of these global targets. So we also need to have collaboration. Yeah, we need to have collaboration with different parties, also funders, to ensure that there is enough resources and expertise in the region to make sure that we have enough effort to do this. So we in Tony Bung and the Right Energy Partnership, we are also looking at what are the efforts that we can bring to the community to ensure that we also can be part of the solution. And we are not just like a bystander in all of these happenings around the globe. So we also want part of the action. And I think our model, which is the community-based model, also have importance in the solution. Next, we go to mitigation and adaptation mechanism. These are I just go to briefly because we have to understand what is the difference between mitigation and adaptation. Because there is some very clear difference to that. So first of all, if we look at mitigation means action that is needed to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that is being released to the environment. So one of the solution is to look at protection of forests. We call it nature-based solutions. Yeah, that is a part of the mitigation efforts. Then these can be amplified through funding of programs like REDD, looking at how to look at better forest management, recognition of community forestry, and so on. We're also looking at reducing the impact of climate change. So we want to look at how climate change effect, for example, like severe flooding or drought, can be reduced the impact. Yeah, and we need to look at this based on what the different commitments of the different countries. One of important part of our work is looking at how the different protocol is actually being used to support our current program. So at the end of the day, every country have their own goal, and the goal is to be carbon negative. What does it mean? This means that when we produce any goods and services or any environment services, we are producing less carbon than before. What we call carbon neutral, same level. But carbon negative means we are producing less than, or we are actually putting more carbon to the environment, to the ground, sequestering it than what we are actually emitting on the environment. So that is carbon negative. So this involves one, reduction of emission, and then secondly, we are looking at how to pull down more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere to be sequestered in our forests, and also maybe using carbon capture technology such as CCUS, or we can use biochar, anything that capture the carbon and store it on the ground. But the key is here reduction. Yeah, we have to reduce in order to be carbon neutral, and later on carbon negative when we have more effort to draw carbon out from the atmosphere, meaning to say we are emitting less than what we using. So I think that is the first session about.